You finally discovered the secrets to time travel. All you ever needed was banana and microwave. We star. Tee things off by meeting self-proclaimed mad scientist Renter Oakbay and his childhood friend Mary Sheena. They are going to the Akihabara radio building to attend a seminar on time travel by a man named Dr. Doc Nakabachi. While in the seminal work Bay's reading through the doctor's notes when he realizes that the notes in his theory of time travel dirt actually belong to him, Okabe calls email, telling him he stole all this information from a man who back in the early era of the incident claimed to be a time traveler. John Titor. The doctor angrily tells Okabe not to compare him to that fraud Okabe. Then I asked him to explain the differences between his work and the theories of Joe. HN title. The Dr. Stem is not having a good answer. Just before Guild and taps Okabe in the shoulder, taking them out into the hallway. The girl. Then I asked him what he was going to say. About 15 minutes early. I'll say that it seemed really important. Okabe has no clue what she's talking abo. UT when he recognizes her as Kirisi Moxie, a remarkable university student who's had several articles published in Science magazine. He then claims that she must be an agent from the organization, before pulling out his phone telling the person on the other end not to worry, you'll somehow get out of this. Here's to the grab the phone out of his hand, and it's turned off with no one being on the other end. Yeah, Okabe. But he's a bit of a role player. Kurisu then again asked him what he was going to tell her about 15 minutes ago. Okabe says he sees through tricks before running away. Once around the corner he wonders to himself what she was talking about as he's never met her before. Just then his phone rings, and he receives a scrambled video message. Mayor then walks around the corner, and they talked briefly before we hear blood-curdling scream in the building. Okabe goes to investigate, and upon telling the court he finds Kurisu lying in a pool of her own blood outside the building. He tells me to read that he just saw body to look like it had been stabbed to death ashore. Tea time later, he's about to send a text to his friend Daru's informing him about what had happened. He clicks send, and a strange sensation washes over him. He finds the streets have become vacant, and a strange satellite has crashed into the radio building he was just in. Later that day at Okabe's makeshift laboratory named the Future Gadget Laboratory, they are working on a phone-controlled microwave, which has a weird side effect of turning bananas into a gelatinous form. Okabe then finds out that the seminar he attended at the radio building early that day was actually cancelled due to the satellite crashing into it with his friends, all telling him how mad he was about not being able to confront the doctor about his theories. Okabe begins to get concerned about his different memories afterwards as Okabe and Daru go to election. Being held in an elevator, Okabe demands to see Daru's phone as he sent him a text about Kurisu being stabbed early that day. Daru that mentions that he got that text 5 days ago, but it was split into 3 different messages. So we thought it was spam. Okabe instructed the possibility that his messages were sent into the past. And as the doors to the elevator opened, he finds Kurisu Markets say standing in front of him alive and unharmed. He's completely shocked of finding her alive, say that just 3 hours ago he saw her dead. He then begins to poke and prod her to see if he's actually real. Made uncomfortable by this, she walks away afterwards. She's presenting a lecture on the unlikeliest of time travel being a possibility, calling the idea foolish. Frustrated, Okabe can't help himself by jumping in, and I intervene and saying that it's far too early to decide if it's real or not. Kurisu welcomes the objection and opens up the lecture into a discussion in which he is probably destroyed and humiliated by her superior logics and facts, as easily dismantles every point he makes. The afterwards, Okabe makes his way to a nearby shrine. Meets up with Mary and Root Rushibaro practicing some sword swing, and Mary texted him to come and help her out, because apparently she can't carry like 3 bags of produce by herself, which reviews father gave to us. Okabe thanks Recall for giving them the food and then role plays his hand having been posse. Said Oskin group go for help. You know what I'm saying, which Root is happy to play along with. Okabe then thinks to himself all of the feminine qualities Reika has. Afterwards, Okabe make his way back to the lab. Rames's landlord's new part-time employee Susan Hot Money. She will be helping the landlord you go to. Nosy nickname Mr. Braun by Oak Bay with the CIT shop. Later that night Okabe does some research about the differences between what he experienced throughout the day and his memories not matching up. On a message board he finds someone calling himself John Title resurfacing once more to talk about his time travel. Okabe believes this John Title to be a fake posing as the original. However, as he tries to do some research on the original, the posted in the early 2000s, he finds out that there's no record of him anyway. Shocked, he tries going through his books were written on him. Finding the no longer there, he then calls Daru asking him where he's put his books and John Title and daughter, who has no clue who that is. The next day Okabe gets his photo taken by a strange woman. He runs over to her and asks her to delete it. She apologizes, saying she was just taking photos as proof of where she went today and what she saw before, then asking if he has information on an old retro PC model. She says she would leave the photo if he finds out what sort of PC it is. He reluctantly accepts, and we find out her name is Mawaka. Afterwards, he makes his way over to a cat-made cafe when Mary is also working with, then introduced to another person who strangely goes along with committee's role playing Waze Ferris. Inside the cafe he meets with Daru, who tells him that the PC the woman is looking for is called an IBM 5100, super rare and super hard to get a hold of. Back at the lab, they again began experimenting with the phone-controlled microwave. They take a single bit on off the bunch and place it in the microwave to begin the test, set in the time of 120. After the time it goes off, the banana is gone. They both think that the playing a trick on each other when they look at the bundle that it came from and can see that it's completely reattached to it, but is now green. Angela fight. They are shook when Curious, who comes in saying that the doing an interesting experiment. Okabe demands know how she found them, and she admits that Daru gave her the directions. She walks in saying that she wanted to know a little bit more about his claim of her being stabbed, but now she's intrigued about the jealous banana on the bunch. She tells him that she wants to know the details about what this banana has to do with that microwave. He tells her that he will let her know about the secrets of the foreign microwave only if she joins them and becomes a fellow club member. She reluctantly agrees, and we see Mayu running back up the stairs to the lab with some. Whereupon, entering the lab, she's happy to see this finally another girl member to the team. They then run another experiment trying to replicate the conditions that led to the text you sent the Daru about Carissa being stabbed. Arriving a week in the past, they place Mary's chicken in the microwave and begin the test with Daru's in an Oak Bay. A text Dr. Short time Mary still just wanted it her chicken and pace opens up the microwave, causing a burst of electricity to shoot across the room, splitting the desk the microwave was on and making a hole in the floor. The chicken unfortunately didn't make it. Okabe, however, checks as far in finding that he did receive the text from Daru a full week earlier. Okabe then declares it to be a full-blown time machine capable of sending messages back to the past. Kurisu then leave the lab in disbelief. Sometime later, Okabe Bazi's de Are you looking at images of the Large Hadron Collider belonging to SIR, the European Organization for Nuclear Research? Daru then tells you about the rumors that the LHC could generate many black holes. Okabe then members about what John Title had posted about in the early 2000s, that Sun Ma Kess the first time machine in the year 2034 then, with that power, allegedly creates a dystopian future. Okabe then Daru's trying to hack into Sun to see if anything they're doing is somehow related. Later, Okabe manages to get in contact with the person who is claiming to be John tied up currently on the message board he gives Okabe is number 7. If you try to contact him, he'll answer the next day as Okabe and Mayu return to the lab. They hit Daru's celebrating that he has managed to hack into. After reading through some of the emails, they come across some information that reveals undoing some top-secret time travel experiments with many black holes, which have resulted in the death of several people. They then try to delve deeper into the system, but everything else is encrypted. And the code the Daru cut to suffer with his hardware. Okabe then messages the number he was given by John Title, wanting to ask him something. He received a follow-up sometime later being told that the encryption is the proprietary programming language developed by IBM, and in order to read or decipher it they would also need the IBM 5100 computer that my week was looking full while out doing his laundry. He happens to run into Kurisu, who is still in denial about his phone microwave being in any way a time machine, saying that the just must have been some kind of error, and that she'll have no part of it anymore, and that she would make the same mistakes as a father did. Okabe then apologizes for making her join the lab, telling how she would have any obligation to come anymore. She begins to leave when he pulls her back as king her if she knows anything about the IBM 5100, tell her that it's related to decipher in son's dog secrets. Thank you, that is just making it all up. She walks off. Sometime later, while eating lunch, Okabe received a phone call from Mary, telling him the Ferris has seen the PC that he's been looking for, and it's apparently in the stride belonging to Riker's family. As he makes his way over there, Kurisu, who has also been doing her own investigation on the IBM 5100, calls today, asking him where he is. He tells me that he's going to the shrine, and she quickly hangs up. After arriving at the shrine we see Kurisu already there. Ruka then runs up and Okabe explains the situation to him. Review goes and tells his father and author. Short time the father comes back explaining that when the IBM was donated to the shrine 10 years ago they were told that someday a young man with a P who is in need of it, telling them to take good care of it. They then borrow the IBM with Kurisu and Okabe base struggling to carry it back to the lab. As they get back to outside the lab, Susan How walks out of the CRT store and is super interested what they're carrying. However, her mood Chan guess completely when she notices the person helping Okabe somehow knowing Curtis' full name, then glaring at her while in an attack position. Susan How then gets called back inside the shop and Kurisu also Okabe what that was all about. I nominate Ski, are you cut out? Once inside they open up the box and set up the IBM 5100 and gives Okabe list of parts you will need in order for it to connect his PC and be able to decipher son's information. Okabe then sets out to gather the parts. While out looking he runs into Susa, who helped him find a bunch of the replacements after she explains that she once knew someone who was really knowledgeable about the IBM. Okabe demands to get in touch with them, but since R explains that's impossible because the dead heathen. Also why she had such a strange reaction to Kurisu. Elia Tuzla apologizes saying that it wasn't anything she'd done and she shouldn't act like that when Kurisu doesn't know yet, giving him a warning that he should be careful around her. Later that night, as the hanging out, Dari manages to get the IBM connected to his PC. Using the IBM they manage to decipher son's encrypted files. When they find out that Soon has been actively doing time travel experiments for many years, at least 14 people have been sent back in time during the testing. However, whenever someone is sent back in time, they cannot survive the RNA ended up in a gelatinous state similar to the bananas as a result of them not to being squeezed in a molecular level. A policy through the mini black holes have been generated. Despite the shocking news, Okabe vows to perfect the phone microwave, beating Soon to the punch of real-time revel. The next day they inform Mary about Zone's experimentation and the new gold perfect that time machine before Sun does. They then dubbed the messages that they sent into the past emails, beginning to experiment with it more heavily. It doesn't take long before they learned what time they can send the messages, how much data can be sent in a single message, and how far back they can send them. The next day off to continuously blowing up his phone since they first met, asking about the IBM 5100. But we could show up at the lab wanting to see it. Officing it, she requests the loans it to a witch. She refuses, saying he himself is borrowing it. But after he's done with it she can borrow it. He's about to ask her to leave when all the LET members come in, having zero concepts of secrecy. They all talk about the time machine openly, which but we could become interested and see no other option. Okabe the closer, the newest member of the team, becoming a lead member number 5, and update the phone mic ways programming, let it be able to receive it the email from anyone anywhere, not just the forward connected to the microwave. Before they run the first official tests, Mary shows Mohika around the lab, so she doesn't feel out of place. Wanted to test if they can actually change the policy. Okabe sentence of a message of the winning lottery numbers. Upon sending the message, he experiences a similar sensation to the one he had previously at the satellite crash. After recovering, he asked everyone if the plan worked. However, no one else is now aware of the experiment ever taking place. Brooker then comes in apologizing, leading Okabe know that he did take a lot of numbers that he gave lost. We can put them in, but you days aren't personal era. Unfortunately got them wrong. Okabe then thinks to himself, what John Tyler has it on the message boards, deducing that the mail he sent must have shifted him to a world line which Rick had bought a lottery ticket, thus causing the experiment to never happen in the first place. Confused as to why he's the only one who is seemingly able to remember, he again contextual title, who informs Okabe that he is indeed core CD, but is also confused as to why he can retain his memory. Small world line that has been altered, saying he's never met anyone that has that power, will be full tied to that. Explains that he may be the savior, the one that will lead the world line beyond the 1% divergence point and henceforth avoid the dystopian future. Sun has planned nothing too serious. Okabe that explains the nature of world line shifts to Dara and Kurisu, and how he seems to be the only one who remembers when the change, because your first instability as defeating the Steiner. Yes, the experiment's continue. What we could request to send that email. Upon doing so, Okabe shift to a completely new world line in which no one else remembers her. I have interacted with any of them. The next day, Record comes by the lab and listens in on the discussion about never having met Mohika and the time traveling as a whole. He apologizes for listening in but requests that they send that email to his mother before he was born. Say that doesn't other myth about someone's diet, that you can influence a baby's gender before birth, that if you eat lots of meat, you'll end up having a boy, and lots of vegetables. A girl. Carissa was completely confused, having made the fatal mistake of thinking up to this point the Ruka was infected girl. She thinks this is all just a big joke and wants to find out for herself. Placing her hand on his chest, she finds out that yes, he is a guy. Listening to Riker's wishes, they send email to the pager belonging to Rip, his mother, telling her to eat lots of vegetables for a healthy baby. This causes Okabe Beta yet again shifted to another world line, although after recovering he doesn't notice any immediate changes from Ruka and can't bring himself to OSC. The next day in the cat-made cafe, as the discussing the time machine there again over the hood. These guys can keep a secret to save their lives. Farce Austin what they're talking about, which could be, refuses to elaborate on. Daro helpful folds like a deck of cards and tells her everything. Back at the lab, Okabe, this goes to the IBM 5100 has gone missing, but also talking to Daro finds at the end of a god in the first place. As a result of my week is initialed the email cursor, then works out to the minor changes to the policy. As a result of that, emails must be causing the butterfly effect, leading to changes far outside their control. Okabe then contacts Riker about the IBM, who explains they did have it at some point, but it's now gone well. That in town, Okabe sees Mohika and confronts her about the IBM, but she also has no idea where it would be and is still desperate to find it. Okabe then discovers that unlike the previous world line, they now older him a week, is giving way to Kurisu theory about the butterfly effect. Off towards the old going visit Paris. In her apartment, we find that her true identity is Remedial Akira, whose family owns all of Akihabara. First then offers them information on the IBM 5100 in exchange for being able to send the email 10 years into the past. Okabe Bear luckily agrees, contacting Kurisu, asking her to set up the phone microwave, allowing Ferris to send the message that she sends it. Okabe then experiences another world line shift, and now in front of him is Ferris's father. Okabe then I asked him about the idea, and a father responds, say the pod with he's a long time ago, and never gave it to the shrine. As he walked back around Akihabara, he disclosed that the district of the city has completely changed, and what used to be a back of the anime culture is now just a standard business district. He realizes that the developed are sent in just one message: prevented moat and anime culture. from ever being introduced into Akihabara. Back in the lab, Okabe commits some slight sexual assault against Ruka. We find out is now actually a girl from as early as sent to the email after being forced to sit on his knees for an L. As punishment from Kurisu for his actions, he makes his way outside where he finds Susa, who reveals that she came to Tokyo to try and find a father, mentioning that she will leave town. She's unable to find him the next day. Okabe then declared so, the newest Leah D member, inviting her to the lab for a farewell party. Back at the lab, as Okabe told him about his plan for the party, he received a text from an unknown number, telling him that they're watching him, sending him the most intimidating picture they can find, a bit of jelly later while shopping round for party food. Mary recalls how in Okabe was a child oiled, he got super sick and she thought he would die, but one night she saw a shooting star and made a wish for him to survive, and the very next day he was better. He then remembers how he felt that night when he was sick, thinking how similar it was to his reading standard ability, activating the things that must have been when he first developed the PAL. Later that night, Susan how doesn't attend the party and instead sends a fable, takes the Okabe, prompting him to send the email to himself ordering him to convince you the heart to attend the party and stay in Tokyo. The next day, Okabe discovers the RT televisions and electronics still below the lab have been serving as a method of sending messages back in time for the phone microwave. Kurisu then theorizes that might be possible to send frontal lobe memories back in time through the phone microwave, allowing the consciousness of a person to time leap into the polished. As Okabe goes in detail with me, you're ready to look for pots Carissa needs for her experiment. He explained to her that a tie leave may be safe to conduct. Then simply sending emails, due to the nature of the butterfly effect, has been happening to him. Along the way they run into Susan Hoff, who tells Okabe the Caruso Ale Gedley works for Sun. Back at the lab, Carissa denies the allegation. She then tells Okabe about the problems she has with a father who grew to hate her because she's the policy and scientific prowess, worrying that if they really make this machine that is able to send someone's memories back to the past, then there'll be no chance of them ever rekindling a relationship because of his jealousy. Later that night, after being forced out of the lab, but to be received another threatening text telling him he knows too much with the image of adults 7 had been attached. Okabe, this one is actually threatening. He then returns quickly to the lab as he feels familiar safety. He gets back finding the lights off and no one around. He's water running from the bathroom, opening the door where just finds Carissa Mary taking a bus together after being scolded by Kurisu for being a Art of the Daru comes in, informing them that the lab has been connected to the sewer network without them knowing. This, however, now lends them the ability to use the Large Hadron Collider whatever they want, which will let them compress memories into the size limit imposed by the DML system. The next day, Carissa completes a time machine and is now capable of sending one's memories up to 2 days in the past. Just as they're about to test the machine, however, Okabe, still bestowed by the threats these received, decides against using the device, suggesting they instead make the discoveries public, which all members also agree on. To celebrate, they decide to have another little party. Throughout the party, Kurisu comes into conflict with Susan Hall, who again claims that she is destined to become the Sun's spy in the future. Mayor, however, manages to calm things down between them later on as they're all hanging out. A bomb threat is televised by the news. Susan how then he is about the lab's direct connection to CERN and leaves Okabe, then strangely notices that a sand timer on the shelf has stopped completely, and a sense of dread washes over him. Mary then complains about a pocket watch no longer working, saying it makes no sense because you just went up. Just then several men break into the lab, telling them to put their hands up. Then in walks the leader of the group, Love Member 5 Mohika. She tells him the Sun will be taking the time machine and the Kurisu Okabe Adaro all coming with her. Also, Okabe, be honest, what about Mary when we correspond, saying that she isn't needed shooting and killing her. Thanks for watching. This is part 1 with part 2 coming out. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it when it comes out.